and welcome to Itay on Software. Uh, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Itay. I'm a professor at adjunct professor at Cal State Fulton. I'm also working in the tech industry for over 2 decades now. Most recently, I'm working at Google and worked at other companies as well. I've mentored over the years hundreds, if not more, of different people who are looking for a position in the software space. And what I wanted to do at this session is to try something new, share a recording with you of working with a former student of mine, Akshay, about getting more interviews and applying to more places. So with that, Akshay, would you like to say hi and something about yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Akshay. As Professor Sharfi already introduced me, I've been a student of Professor Sharfi and been studying in Cal State Fullerton. I'm a recent graduate. Last fall, 2024, 2023, I graduated, and I've been in the pursuit of applying jobs since then. So I'm looking forward for this session and to learn few intricates from Professor about it.
Yes, and a bit about for those of you who don't know, let me give you some statistics. I'll give you statistics about me. When I applied,
Mhm.
and I had experience and I had contacts. When I applied to Google, and I got in about maybe 8 years ago, I applied to um, 90 something companies, maybe 100 companies. And I
Mhm.
applied through references in almost all cases. From that, I got about 3 offers. So my hit ratio was about 1 to 30. So that means for every 30 30 applications that I carefully checked, I got about 1 offer. The statistics
Mhm.
usually are in the tens. If you apply just to one place and you got one place, that means you either made an amazing choice, or maybe you aimed a
Mhm.
bit low. You want to
Mhm.
be in the range of tens. So a good start is to apply to 100. Now, you
Mhm.
might not want to apply the same day. You might want to apply through batches and learn something along the way. But overall, that's your target. Before you apply to maybe 100 different places, you don't really know what's going on. So that means you don't really know how to position yourself. You don't really know the market. Based on 10 applications that, oh, you applied to 10 and you didn't get any, like, you haven't learned anything. So I
Mhm.
would highly recommend, when you are thinking about having meaningful statistics about where you're standing, to try and reach this 100. And that's why we're going to try to do something in this with Akshay. We're going to try and apply to 100 different places at 30 days. If there are good applications and the market is maybe moderate, we would expect something like maybe 7, 8, 7, 6 on site, something like that, that might materialize into maybe 1 or 2 offers. I would assume something like that with somebody who's a new grad. Okay. And with that, let's start. So I'll try and go through maybe a program on how to think about it. I'll go through 3 different stages. So the first one is going to be a strategy. We just basically will talk about which companies to target, how to target them, how to do it. Then we're
Mhm.
going to go into like more kind of the tactics. We're going to talk a bit about artifacts and finding points of contact. The reason is, for example, you probably don't want to apply through a job site. It's just extra hop. I have other videos on that. And the third, we're going to talk about, okay, how much time do I need to spend on this in order to get like
Mhm.
100 applications?
Sounds
So
good.
with that, let's start. So the first thing that we're going to do in this mentorship session is, if you can tell us a bit about yourself. So maybe a bit about your experience, where have you worked in the past, the degrees that you're in, where are you in the job search?
Absolutely. Uh, in my brief journey, I happened to run my bachelor's back there in India in computer engineering. And since after that, I happened to work in the IT industry for almost 5 years. For 3.5 years, I was working with Oracle as a software engineer again. And then I switched to the company called Experian. So both of the experience were completely focused into software development, mainly full stack and focusing on Java and JavaScript based technologies. I happened to explore both of the education, the both of the basically technical sides of products, like in fintech and in healthcare as well. Then in my further pursuit, I happened to join masters here at Calcett Fullerton, just to explore more and make a specialization in computer science. After that, about a couple of years, I graduated from Calcett Fullerton just last year, and I've been applying for similar kinds of position across the United States, just to break into like industry and get my hands-on experience here. So I have been applying almost maybe hundreds of positions in 2 weeks or more. But I've been finding like it's hard to get any interview calls or even follow-up calls from recruiters. So it's been a difficult time, I can say.
Okay. So
Mhm,
I think you mentioned, so you have a bachelor in computer science. You have
mhm,
a master. The bachelor is from
mhm,
India. The master
mhm,
is from computer science here from Cal
mhm,
State Fulton.
mhm.
You have you mentioned maybe 5 years of experience,
That's correct.
5 years of experience, something like that.
Mhm,
And so that's going to be an experienced software engineer.
mhm, mhm,
And you apply to maybe 100 different
mhm,
positions,
mhm,
and you got 2 interviews out of those 100.
mhm.
Okay. By the way, those 2 out of 100, was that just statistically you got an interview, or you think there might have been something special in them?
Uh, I feel those two were like the positions I've been applying since like more than 3 months. So those were like the pending ones, and the recruiter was following up again and again. And then after that, I just got a call from them. So that was purely referrals. I feel like one of my closest friends like been working in the similar teams. So they referred me, and I think because of that, I got into a call.
This is a fantastic point, by the way. A lot of people, they don't understand. They think that maybe when you're thinking about positions, there is like maybe 3 different tiers of positions availability.
Mhm,
One is that there's just no positions. So
mhm,
that means that unless maybe it's a small company and the CEO knows you or something along those lines, then there's just no
mhm,
opportunity because there is no
mhm,
listing. The second is when there is not a lot of listing, companies usually prefer to hire people that their employees know and recommend it. I mean, why not?
mhm,
That's
mhm,
much safer for the company to get much better talent. And if they don't need many, then that's enough.
mhm,
And the third is when they open it up. So when they open it up means that when you apply through, let's say, something like a job site, it's not necessarily people who work in the company who can actually recommend you, then that is going to be, you're going to get an interview. So the fact that you get the interviews through referrals, I mean, it kind of demonstrate the current job market. It's not
mhm,
amazing. It's not
mhm,
terrible. It's kind of in the middle. What does it
mhm,
mean in the middle? It means there are jobs, but it's probably not going to come through applying through some job sites kind of blindly.
mhm,
Or maybe it can, but it's going to be much more difficult. But there are those jobs.
mhm,
Okay, so you worked 5 years. You are
mhm,
in Cal State Fulton, computer science. You've done a bachelor in India, computer science. I would assume you have many friends that are like you,
mhm,
similar experience, give or take, similar
mhm,
credentials, give or take, applying to similar companies, give or take,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
You've been doing this for several months now. So what have you learned
Uh, through the process, yep.
about the successful? So let's say what
Mm.
maybe were people that were more or less successful, and who was more or less successful at finding, at getting an interview?
Absolutely. Uh, uh, I've seen like a lot of my friends, as you said, exactly right. They're on the similar boat, have packed with similar skills, maybe one or two less here or there. I think the key differentiation points that I can say that year of experience maybe, or like the technical skill expertise. Like some of them are like really good at DSA problem solving. Some of them are like terrible at that. And also like some of them have like niche skills, like someone is good at networking, maybe like computer networks, or maybe DevOps or something. So that makes their profile very unique. And the ones which are like not in the mainstream, like they have something unique about their profiles, have got calls, and maybe the similar roles they have break into as well. But whereas the rest of the folks who are like very generic and they don't have any expertise or yeah, so I think those are struggling still.
Yes, and this is something we talked about in the past, the difference
Mm,
between being
mm,
differentiation and generic. So here's maybe something
mm,
to understand. Cal State Fulton, I think we're studying and I teach. It's
mm,
maybe there is 2,000 people, something along those lines, in computer science
mm,
department. You maybe graduates, I don't know, a
mhm,
couple of on the upper hundreds. Add just Cal States together, you get into the thousands. At other
mm,
universities, you're in the tens of thousands. If
mhm,
somebody is generic, even if they have experience, it's still in the
mm,
thousands of people that will apply to the large companies,
mm,
potentially competing over 10, 15 position. You can easily do the math.
mm,
You crossing the 100 plus easy.
mm,
Now, if you're crossing the 100 plus easy, then people need to be filtered somehow. Some of it is going to be, as we mentioned, referrals.
mhm,
And some of it is going to be filtered by differentiation. So what it
mhm,
means is when there is maybe 400 people who apply to a position, and this position is, let's assume, I don't know, gaming
mm,
position, and you need experience with, I don't know, app development. Why not just take
mhm,
somebody who's an app developer?
mhm,
You can do that because there is enough people.
mhm,
So one of the things is that this is something you also learn at business school is um, good times in hiring, which means lots of people are hiring, is good for
mhm,
generic people.
mm.
Other time is better for specialized because you can just hire the specializations. Why not?
Perfect. Mhm,
So I think that's also not surprising. Again, going back to your previous point. Again, the job market is it's kind of mediocre, moderate, not
mhm,
amazing, not terrible. You can find a job. Again, need that referral, need that differentiation. So let's talk about that.
mhm,
Um, where do you think? So there are two parts for this question. First, where do you think you shine? So that means when you are going to join a company, what area do you think you can demonstrate that maybe it's something you would be better than other grads,
mhm,
uh, or maybe better compared to other areas that you have?
mhm,
And if I read your resume, how
mhm,
do I know that you are different? So that means that, let's say I want to get you into, I don't know, backend
mhm.
server pipeline job, something like that. Like how do I read from your resume that you're different?
Absolutely. So I feel I bring like a almost handful years of experience in software development and exploring various kinds of product lines. For example, fintech and healthcare. So I have majorly worked in fintech and happen to learn those intricate concepts of banking and financial services, like a lot of banking jargons and a lot of processes. So in my extensive experience along with tech, I bring that functional knowledge to the table. I'm a good team player. In my previous track records, I have like a lot of kind of appreciation and rewards got from my previous employers. So I feel with that track record, I've been proving myself as a outstanding team player and mentoring juniors as well. Along with that, the tech skills that I provide, I have done like a lot of side projects, and in my job experiences, I have hands-on like a lot of frameworks, like Java-based frameworks, maybe anything related to JavaScript, maybe as well as Python, a lot of scripting. So I have tried my hands on different things. So if the employer has kind of products that he needs a dynamic personality who can basically touch all the aspects of it and basically can drive value out of it, then I could be a great fit. Also, the market is currently trending towards AI and ML. So in my master's course, I happen to do like the AI course as well, and I've done like a couple of projects. So that also adds like edge to my profile, and I'm always down to learn. Like I'm learning, upskilling like every day on various platforms. So I feel that adds as a value to my profile that I can learn new things if that comes forth to me.
So those are excellent points. So let me say the other things that you said that I think are generic. I can
Mm,
learn, good team player,
mm,
can mentor people. That's not
mm,
something specific about Akshay. That's
mm,
anybody
mm,
who's good.
mm,
He's supposed to be able to be, dynamic and be able
mm,
to mentor and all of that
mm,
thing. So that's not differentiation. That's just being
mm,
good at your job.
mm,
Another thing that you mentioned is like maybe scripting, AI,
mm,
getting into AI. Again, many people want to get into
mm,
AI. If your
mm,
experience is not like maybe more heavier in that front, then again, that's not differentiation.
mm,
You have mentioned one thing that is a differentiation.
mhm,
You mentioned fintech
mhm,
and you mentioned healthcare. Now,
mm,
why is that important? It's important because when we're thinking about engineering, what's the difference between an engineering and like, I don't want to say code monkey. So let's say somebody who's just
mm,
coding.
mm.
Engineer uses technology to solve problems. It's important
Absolutely.
to solve
Mm,
problems. So that means that the domain matters because you're supposed to know what the problem is in the domain. Now, if you're working in a massive, huge company that you don't see the domain and you're working at some infra team, maybe it's less important, but it's
mhm,
much, much more important in small company. So for example, if I am the CEO of like 50, 60 people fintech company, the fact
mhm,
that you understand what fintech is, the fact that you worked at fintech, you understand the client, maybe you worked with some of them, that could be a differentiation
mhm,
because I don't need to teach you about the fintech, or maybe you're not really interested in that fintech. So
mhm,
it's a point of differentiation because it can show passion to a certain field, experience in a certain field. Again, that might not work with a huge company,
mhm,
but definitely can work well with a smaller company. So tell me
mm.
more about the fintech or and the healthcare. So how many years and how deep do you understand that domain? Because that could be a differentiation.
Absolutely. So in my past pursuit of my job experience, I started with fintech, and as I said, the employer was Oracle, and they had like various clients. So back there in India, we were working on like retail banking solution software that was like a proprietary software by Oracle, which has been used in a lot of banks as their clients. So as a software engineering person in the team, I was responsible to basically develop a lot of user stories and customization requests and a lot of implementation requests as well. So I collaborated with like functional uh, uh, people in the team, and I learned basically those concepts of what is current account, what is saving account, what is like a loans account, how does that basically does transactions, how does the process works, and basically how to basically map those functional concepts into technical code basically. And I also like interacted with clients, jotted down the requirements or made clarifications on them. I did documentation on whatever new utility or a new module we basically wrote. So that's gets that was like a brief journey of mine into like fintech. On the same pursuit, my manager recommended me to go on site as well for like almost 6+ months, and I was there with clients team, and I was working in close collaboration. I was trying to basically implement the software that we have just developed offshore. So that was again added like a new experience in my profile there. So that was like my brief journey in
Mhm.
financial services
So
there.
I see two things here. First is a
Mm,
domain with
mm,
financial services. You probably want to play that.
mm,
Financial services is a huge industry.
mm,
Um, Maybe today it's not like the fastest growing. It used to be the
mm,
heydays of fintech, but still, again,
mm,
many opportunities, many different companies, many
mm,
things that they're doing.
mm,
The second thing that you mentioned that's actually interesting
mm,
is the solution engineering point of view. So people
mm,
don't know that, but a lot of companies they will have solution engineering, sometimes as big as engineering. I
mm,
have one interview with Jay on my site, and there is um, a whole spectrum of opportunities that are more kind of in the implementation of a solution into the client side. So this is another thing to potentially look at. So, for
mm,
example, if let's say AWS
mm,
has a team of solution, which I'm sure they have,
mm,
into let's say something like well, maybe I'm not sure that they have, but I would assume into let's say something
mm,
like financial services
mm,
would be a nice match because you have experience again doing both. So this is maybe
Mhm.
one way to think about when you're looking at like software engineering. Sometimes it will be called, different companies call this differently. Like at Palantir, I
Mhm.
think they call it front deployed engineers or something like
Yep,
that.
that's correct.
So people that have experience, like engineers that have experience working directly with clients, there's
Mhm.
often demand for that. So
Mhm.
now that we have seen that you have maybe two different angles, one is kind of this, maybe let's call it front deployed. So
Mhm.
positions more front deployed, more engaging with clients.
Mhm.
That could be something that you could differentiate yourself. The second is because again, not all engineers work directly with clients to
Mhm.
to their solution. And the second thing is the fintech. So if you find something that's both, maybe it will be more. So let's talk about the target positions. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So for target positions, we said maybe fintech. Does that sound something that interests you?
Absolutely. I've been working on that, and it's quite fascinating all the time.
Fintech definitely have
Mhm.
like 100
Mhm.
companies. So
Mhm.
if that's something that fintech and again, how many years of experience you have with healthcare?
Almost a year and a half.
A year and a half. So also there, was it also kind of front deployed solutions, or was it like
No, it
engineering?
was like a software engineer position in the core development team. So I was responsible to like build up modules from scratch, and we were more focused on cloud, like the AWS services they were using.
Got
So
it. So
that
it was
that was
more
like
infra.
the yeah, yep.
Okay. So let's say if you take something like fintech and tackle it, the benefit of tackling an industry is that you can actually quite quickly list companies. You talk with a couple of people from there, they maybe know some other people, and you kind of can branch into that. You can also target alumni who
Hmm.
work
Hmm.
in fintech. They probably looked for maybe similar positions, or at least their friends are aware of. So it just makes it very targeted. Another thing that you can do with a targeted industry is to go to like events, either
Hmm.
virtual or in person, where people talk about fintech. You can learn a lot
Hmm.
about different companies. You can look at venture capital that invest in fintech. So it's just kind of easier than kind of spraying over many different
Hmm.
industries. Again, it doesn't mean that you cannot apply to companies that are not in fintech. It's
Hmm.
just easier when you're targeting and researching an industry, especially on the smaller companies. So what it
Hmm.
means, if you try to start finding people, finding good companies that maybe have like 100 people,
Hmm.
I think it's much more difficult when you're not researching an industry. Because when you
Right.
research in an industry, you can go, I don't know, Gartner, Quadrant, or whatever it is, and they will have the list of those companies. And finding out one company is the same of maybe finding 10. Make sense?
Right.
Okay. We also talked about roles. So the roles I would assume is going to be maybe software backend engineering. I would assume not like UI, given your
Hmm.
past experience. Maybe also
Hmm.
solution engineering. Does those things make sense?
Yeah, I think that better suits like I've been focusing on backend majorly. Though I have worked on UI for a while, so but measuring in backend.
Backend in general has more positions than UI.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think UI is great with people that are visual. From a
Hmm.
technology perspective, sometimes it's maybe easier to find UI when you have maybe less experience because technology is
Hmm.
gonna keep on changing.
Hmm.
But backend, I think in general is like 70 or 80% of the position. It's more positions in general.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk about the size of companies. What are the size of companies that you apply to so far? Or what were they mostly?
If I just take a spectrum of 100 companies, mostly they were like enterprise companies, like maybe like 50 companies were like enterprise, more than 1,000 employees, and rest of the 50s I was trying to distribute them into mid-size and small size. So maybe 25 could be a mid-sized company, whereas like maybe 100 to 500 employees, and rest of the 20 25 would be like a startup
Hmm.
from any niche spot like that.
So when you're looking at companies, maybe one thing, as the company is a bit smaller, if it's not kind of the hottest and well-known in the field, maybe you would apply to like AI, the hottest AI company, and they're small, there is a lot of applications. But in general, I think the ratio of the number of applications to a position is a bit better on the smaller companies. And here's why.
Mhm.
When you are applying to a larger company, everybody knows Apple. Everybody
Yep.
knows Amazon. Everybody knows those
Mhm.
companies. So they will apply through
Mhm.
them. Those companies are already large. So even technically that they hire more people than smaller companies, then there
Mhm.
is way more candidates that will apply there.
Mhm.
It's also because it's a very large company, it's kind of hard to differentiate, right?
Mhm.
When you apply to, let's say, I don't know, let's say Amazon AWS,
Mhm.
and there is other new grads, other backend, it might be harder to differentiate versus, let's say, if you apply to maybe a smaller kind of fintech type of companies. So one
Mhm.
of the things is when you're thinking about the mix of companies, um, smaller companies, of course, not smaller companies. I mean, a legit smaller company. How do you know that the smaller company is usually a good company? There are many ways to know that. First, you talk with people. You can see
Mhm.
their products as well. You could check
Mhm.
Glassdoor and other type of rankings that they have. You can check their funding, when they got funding, how they got funding. By the
Absolutely.
way, there is a lot of research of smaller companies like I think like Crunchbase and others that will give you that list of companies.
Good.
And you can also do that search in like say LinkedIn or Indeed or something by size of company. So that
Mhm.
is quite useful. Let's talk about location. Are there location restriction? I mean, besides the US.
Uh, Not really. I've been like open to relocation since for a while now. There are like no such location preferences I do have. I was more focused towards like west or east coast because I love to stay close to maybe shores. But that wasn't like not like a very strict bar. I can relocate to
One
relevant
thing I would
positions.
say is be aware when you apply to a position,
Mhm.
the location that you put on your resume. Here's the thing: you're a student, so
Mhm.
technically you're not like really living anywhere because you
Mhm.
can just move.
Mhm.
Now, the point is that sometimes if you're a company, let's say in New York, and somebody is saying Fullerton, California,
Mhm.
they think, oh wow, I need to fly them in, I need to do, like
Mhm.
relocation. So
Mhm.
the cost for you versus a New York candidate becomes much higher
Mhm.
because they think, okay, a New York candidate,
Mhm.
I don't need to relocate them, I don't need to do anything.
Mhm.
And the cost for you is higher because they would
Mhm.
assume, okay, I need to fly them in, I need to relocate them. Now,
Mhm.
if you live in Fullerton and actually need a relocation, then
Mhm.
that's real. However, if it's maybe you're interested in, let's say, working in New York, you can
Mhm.
always try to um, put the fact that you intend to live in New York. You just can say, hey, I live in New York. And if you have an on-site interview, you can line them up and just fly. That's something that I've seen many people do it in the past. And that's not kind of distracting people from uh, thinking that now they need to spend some extra thousands of dollars to hire you. So automatically your resume gets kind of to the bottom.
Sounds good. Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about an employer point of view. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe here is the point that when you're thinking about an employer point of view, let's not look maybe at the bigger companies. Let's look at the smaller
Mhm.
companies that you apply to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Why do you think? How do you think they read your resume? So from their point of view, okay.
Mhm.
What is kind of the things that maybe jump as a yes, the things that you see jump as a no, and are there any things that jump that can be breached?
Okay. So, as you mentioned, like maybe smaller companies' point of view, I can say whenever I try to apply to any startup, I just look into their product and I see which basically domain they're working in and what are they up to these days. I try to follow up them everywhere and try to basically match my profile whether it's like a really good fit. For example, the technologies that they have been working on, their product is built. Do I have any expertise on them? I try to showcase as I have worked on like very like many of the technologies. the yes would be if I can literally demonstrate what I know exactly is they're working on. So I think that's a yes. For example, I say I know Angular and I've been working on Angular for like almost 2+ years. That's an UI framework as well. I know Spring Boot, which is a backend framework, and I have a really good expertise on that as well. And whole of their product is built from Angular and Spring Boot. So I think that's a huge yes. I feel like I'm a great fit in their technical skill set. Also, if the domain is similar, like as I said, I've been working in fintech for a while now, and they have a financial product like maybe something related to credit cards. So I'm a great fit in that aspect as well. So if this kind of things they see in my resume or in my profile, that should be a yes in my perspective. The no might be if I have like not focused uh, on the job description. Like they might have been asking some more things, like they might need something related to data engineering kind of skill set, and I don't have those, so that might be a no in their perspective, I feel. So is there any gap bridgeable? Yeah, I can upskill myself with those new skills or the gap skills, like I mean anything related to data, maybe learn few more uh, uh, maybe framework, or maybe I just do some side projects in there and get myself shine in the gaps, so I can bridge that gap that way.
Sure, I would say on the yes part, you do have experience. On
Mm,
the no part, one of the things that's important when somebody's, you mentioned Angular. One of the
mhm,
things that's important when somebody reads your resume
mhm,
is to have it very clear in their head.
mhm,
What are you about?
mhm,
So if you start to mix, let's say, front end and back end and doing this, a bit of this, a bit of that, then
mhm,
it starts to become jack of all trade, master of none. So I think the challenge for you is actually
mhm,
the opposite. The
mhm,
challenge for you is not that you haven't done enough. I think is that you've
mhm,
done things that were kind of scattered. That's maybe what
mhm,
I hear.
mhm,
I always said the best way for somebody to, there are two ways that somebody can look an expert at something
mhm,
in the resume or look like a good fit. The
mhm.
first is to add experience that is relevant. The second is to remove experience that's irrelevant.
True.
So what it means is that one of the things is when somebody is reading, and again, if an experience is not relevant for the role, it's perfectly fine to delete it. Um, so one of the things that I think I would say is when you are personalizing for
Mhm,
a position, try to make it more about that position and how can you deliver on that. And unless something just shows, oh wow, this person is like amazing because I don't know, you won the Boston Marathon or something,
mhm,
I would just consider to leave that out. Because again, with 5 years
mhm,
of experience,
mhm,
it might be, it's not necessarily that you haven't done enough. It's more like
mhm,
it might look a bit unfocused, right?
mhm.
And the good
Makes sense.
example here is that you mentioned you're interested, like maybe more kind of back end and working with clients. It could
Mhm,
be for that position that maybe Angular and more like front end is going to be useful,
mhm,
but it could also look like a bit this kind of distracting,
mm.
right? So maybe
Right.
something to keep in mind. Now, of course, it's a 100 position. That's why we say always customize.
Mhm,
Don't get people confused. Your
mhm,
resume
mhm,
is supposed to be relevant for the position that you apply to. Maybe a
mhm,
way to think of it is like a proposal to do that job.
mhm,
If somebody would come and let's say do plumbing in your house, and they will
mhm,
say, I'm a plumber. Here's my
mhm,
resume that I can do plumbing, and I'm
mhm,
also a baker, so also at a bakery, and I also have a shop for paint, and I also, and every time that they add like this
mm,
also, and it's not around, you
mm.
feel like okay, this person may be taking that thing a bit less seriously. So it's maybe
Perfect.
better to expand on areas that are relevant and maybe
Mhm.
remove areas that are not relevant. This is in general advice.
Perfect. Yeah.
Cool. Let's go to tactics. Let's talk a bit about this, okay? So
Mhm.
the time is, when do you usually apply to a position? How do you manage your time?
Uh, in the in a day, I have dedicated my times in maybe in mornings and in the evenings, or maybe just be before going to bed. Like I've just dedicated some times. So all the day, I don't keep applying. I just like get up, and when I'm ready, before getting started with my regular sessions or any study thing that I have planned, I just spend like 30 minutes or an hour just to apply in the beginning. In the again in the afternoon, maybe in the evening, like that twice or thrice a day. So that's how I have basically done my
How
schedule.
many
And
hours per day?
so maybe on weekdays it's like really less, maybe an hour or two. And on weekends I try to sit for like almost 2 hours twice or thrice.
Okay. So one of
Mm,
the things I would say is, just from the listening to this, it looks like maybe you're
mm,
not putting enough in that. I would
mhm,
say, when you're looking, if you're just looking to apply,
mhm,
that's actually easy. That's not a lot of work. I mean, what is applying? I mean, I can
mhm,
send my
mhm,
resume to, like, there is those automatic services that will spread your resume to every open position. So
mhm,
applying is not the point.
mhm,
The point is to do the work to make sure that the applying is effective.
mhm,
So, for example, applying for a reference, making sure it's fit to that position, finding those smaller companies that maybe are less known. Remember, if a company takes you even an extra 10 minutes to find out that they're good companies, that
mhm.
means that 95% of the people have not discovered it,
Okay. Mhm.
because they never took that 10 minutes.
Right.
So you don't need any work to apply to, let's say, Apple, because everybody can just
Mhm,
say Apple software engineer, just apply. But if there is, like,
mhm,
say, a good company with maybe 100 people, then probably they haven't done the work to apply to it. So I would
mhm.
say one thing is, I would recommend maybe on average something like 4 hours a day. So
Okay.
to increase it, it's
Mhm,
also a good mental model. Um, Finding a job is a job and should be treated as a job. If you had a job, would you work 30 minutes a day, sometimes before you open, sometimes 30? No,
mhm.
but it is a job. And if you treat it as a job, then you will get the results of being good at your job, right?
Makes sense. Mhm.
The second thing is, let's talk about job sites. Which job sites do you use?
I primarily use LinkedIn Jobs, Indeed, and I also search company's name on like Google and go on their careers page and apply. So that's like measure three that I've been checking out.
Okay. That's overall good. One thing I would mention for smaller companies is, companies that get funding usually grow.
Hmm.
That's kind of obvious. So what it means
Hmm.
is that, if you look at companies that get funding, maybe not a week ago, but let's say several
Hmm.
months ago, that means usually that they
Hmm.
grow.
Hmm.
So try and look at companies that are
Hmm.
not necessarily through the job sites, because there might be
Hmm.
many different reasons why they don't publish in those job sites. If it's, or maybe
Hmm.
it's like they publish on Monster, I don't know what, like some other job sites.
Hmm.
So if you find a list of, let's say, 300 fintech companies, sometimes there is like a list. Like, you can get those
Hmm.
lists, there is those infograms of, like, I don't know, 500 top companies in fintech, or the ecosystem of fintech, or something like that, right? There's many
Hmm.
of those. I always see them. There is a
Hmm.
list of 500 companies. You can go 500 companies, just check. Do they hire software
Hmm.
engineer? Do they hire software engineer? Software
Hmm.
engineering is a very common to hire. So it's not like maybe product management, which many companies are just not going to have, because maybe the CEO, maybe they're not hiring for
Hmm.
that. Software engineering, I mean, usually if you have an open position, it's going to be either sales or software engineering, like one of two.
Right.
So I would say you should have a reasonable hit ratio. And by the way,
Hmm.
even if you don't and you like the company, send an
Hmm.
email.
Right.
If it's a smaller company, send an email to the
Hmm.
CEO. Say, hey, I like your company because of this and that. I worked in fintech, I think might be a
Hmm.
match. You don't know. Maybe they're like thinking about hiring somebody they already know, and they don't bother publishing a position, but then, hey, this person might be a bit better. So maybe.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So I would say, look at the job sites, kind of alternatives for that. Like, find out those companies, look if they have positions. If they're very
Hmm.
small and you like them, you can send an email to the CEO. It's
Hmm.
usually, they're usually very easy to find.
Mhm.
Or if you cannot find them, you can use LinkedIn. If
Mhm.
you don't, and of course, explain why. Uh,
Mhm.
don't be a spammer.
Mhm.
And if it's they have a position, then ask for a referral. Like it's usually not that hard to find.
Mhm. Makes
And
sense.
somebody you know. Okay. Um, let's talk about the support group. Okay. As I mentioned
Mhm.
in, I think in the previous video, the only proprietary information that you have that's really
Mhm.
useful, like say you're
Mhm.
working with a couple of friends, right?
Mhm.
The proprietary information that you have is usually not the position, it's a reference. So that means if you have a reference to that company, that's something that can differentiate you from others. The fact that there is a position, if it's a position and it's listed, then uh,
Mhm.
probably already a bunch, like 100, 200 people already applied. So your friend applying is not a big deal.
Mhm.
So what is your support group? Like, do you work with other people on that? Do you track it together? Do you compare? What is it like?
Uh, Yeah, I think it's quite like a bit of passive kind of sport. It's not like actively somebody is doing something on my behalf. So it's like we're a bunch of friends who are like find ourselves on the same boat, maybe same years of experience and similar tech stacks. So we keep in touch. We keep discussing maybe weekly that how was the week for you? How, did you get anything from anywhere, or what direction are you looking forward to, basically, or maybe discuss anything technical, discuss some problems they might have like heard or might got in their recent interviews. So that's how basically we learn from each other, and even keep sharing any new things, any news or anything from from their side. So that's how basically I've been basically working with my support.
Okay. I think a support group is really helpful here. It's kind of
Mhm.
keeping you on track
Mhm.
uh, towards making progress.
Mhm.
And I would recommend maybe when you're thinking about the support group, it's also going
Mhm.
back to tracking. So what is
Mhm.
tracking? Let's assume that you send an email to somebody, hey, you know, I saw this position, it's really interesting. I think it might be a match because something, something.
Mhm.
Would you mind forwarding my resume to this position? I'm just giving an example.
Mhm.
Let's this person hasn't replied. How do you even track those things? So one of the things that I
Mhm.
would say is always, always, always have a tracker.
Yep.
Now, why is this important? It's important because first it puts you on progress, the fact that you
Mhm.
progress towards something. It also gives you milestones. The fact that you get interviews, that is an accomplishment.
Mhm.
Don't look for the got hired as an accomplishment because that's
Mhm.
in the end. That's not really a milestone.
Mhm.
Um, a spreadsheet gives you milestone. You know, ask for a referral. Did I get a referral? And
Mhm.
it also with time it helps you to calibrate what are the things that you do that's working and what are the things that you do that's not working.
Mhm.
So when you see tracking, another benefit is the like the CRM nature of it, the customer relationship management. So
Mhm.
you apply through a person, hey, you know, can you forward my resume, something like that. Then let's say
Mhm.
they say no. So then you might try a different person, hey, you
Mhm.
know, like, and then they say no, and then you apply through the site
Right.
and you time it. So what it means is you give a person like a week each, and if
Mhm.
not, then you go to the company. Now, sorry, go through the sites. Now, tracking is useful because you don't necessarily need to apply every single day. For example, let's assume that you are currently doing a research. You want to
Mhm.
populate companies that you should apply to.
Mhm.
It's better to do that as a step and populate, let's say, 100 of them
Mhm.
than to try and apply. Why? Because how do you populate 100 companies? You would do some research. Maybe
Mhm.
you will go to like those infographics or these Gartner reports, or maybe talk with somebody from the industry, or maybe look at industry events in fintech or whatever it is.
Mhm.
That's going to be a very different type of work than applying. But that still gives you a sense of, again, progress. So I would say use a tracker and don't aim for
Mhm.
applying 3 times a day. Aim for
Mhm.
doing work equivalent to apply 3 times a day.
Mhm. So, would you recommend like if I'm targeting like at least 2 to 3 hours, so I should be sitting like in a one go. Should I be like trying to focus, applying and not scattering the time during the day?
I think it's much more effective to do things in
Mm-hmm,
stages, and I'll talk
mm-hmm,
about this.
mm-hmm,
So a stage would be um, finding company.
mm-hmm,
Then another stage would be for all those companies, find if they have
mm-hmm,
open position.
mm-hmm.
Then another stage for all of those companies with open position, find to contact person.
Right.
And then another stage is for all those things, for all those two contact person, personalize my resume,
Mm-hmm,
personalize my cover letter. I think it's easier instead of just going kind of one by one by one, just
mm-hmm,
batch the type of work that you need to do. Because here's the thing,
mm-hmm,
finding out 10 companies is not 10 times the time than finding one company, because there is a
mm-hmm,
context switch, right? If you see a report, for example, or if you talk with a person, let's say you talk with somebody fintech, and it's like, oh, which
mm-hmm,
companies are hiring?
mm-hmm,
It's, it's going to give you more than one.
mm. Right.
And
I think that's a, yeah, sorry to interrupt. Like, I've been switching context a lot. Like, I've been applying to a company from a domain, and then suddenly I jumped into other company, which is completely into different domain. That takes a lot of efforts, but I think this was
exactly.
like a brilliant point. I could have just focused on something similar for a while, and then might be moving on to something else. So
And if you want a
that's
sense
brilliant.
of maybe accomplishment, like what I've done in the past is I would assign points. So what it means is
Mm-hmm,
every good point, let's assume that you want to get 30 points a day. 30 points is the equivalent of applying to 30 companies, okay?
mm-hmm,
How much is finding company worth? How much is finding into contacts worth? How
mm-hmm,
much is, and if you will do your points and just make sure to hit 30 points a day,
mm-hmm.
then you would have done the equivalent of applying to 3 positions a day.
Perfect. Mm-hmm,
You can assign, I don't know if it's like a game, but you can assign, like, say, I don't know, 3 points on the company name, 3 points on the personalizing resume,
mm-hmm.
2 points each on finding contact person, 2 points on sending the email. Because otherwise, the only thing that you count is sending that email. But that actually is the easy part.
Wow, that's a cool idea. I've been using this kind of approach in solving DSA problems, per se, like lead code problems. If I could solve like a kind of problems, and then I can basically break into the concept again. Am I solving this problem like third time? Then I add 1 point to that bucket. So I think this is a similar idea.
By the way, why one of my biggest advice is why to go after in the industry. You go after an industry
Mm,
because applying to 100 position within the same industry from a quality of application perspective is going to take you 10x less
mhm,
than going for 100 different industries. Now, why is that?
mhm,
It's because finding the companies,
mhm,
it's the same research. Like if you want to find
mhm,
good companies in the industry, it's not
mhm,
you go to a list and you just write what's there.
mhm,
If you want to personalize your resume,
mhm,
first, resumes in fintechs, the domain part of it's not going to be that different. So,
mhm,
or at least I would assume it's not going to be that different. So it's much
mhm,
easier than if, let's say, you fly to fintech one day and let's say app development the other day, and now you have to completely highlight the areas that might be relevant for app development.
mhm,
So it's much easier. And again, if you ran out of position in fintech, which I doubt, I think there's
mhm,
easily tens of thousands of companies in fintech,
mhm.
then you can move to something else.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, you can still apply to just the large companies on bulk, kind of
Mhm,
the Apple, Amazon,
mhm,
all of that on bulk.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
those are usually quite generic. So I would
mhm,
say it's you can still do those. You will
mhm.
quickly run out of them. So you will
Right.
quickly run out of the even in the S&P 500, if you go for companies that like in the tech space, you have a couple of
Mhm,
tens. So
mhm.
once you're done with them, then you go into the industry approach.
Yeah, sounds good. I have one follow-up question on this. So, like the top tier companies, we call them like fang man companies. Do they have any sort of policies that if some candidate has applied them to any position in last 3 months, then and he got like interview, couldn't get through, then he has to basically wait for a certain time, like a cold period, cooling down time before applying again?
There is a cooling down period. I'm actually not sure what it is for
Hmm.
Google, but there is some cooling down period. I'm not sure what it is. I would assume it's probably less. It's probably a year or less
Hmm.
and 3 months or more,
Hmm.
but I don't know.
Okay, so there must be some time basically a candidate should wait before reapply.
I think I think if you got a no,
Hmm.
so if you sent your resume and for whatever reason, and you send it again, I don't think
Hmm.
you were not rejected. You were
Yep,
just
not
if you
selected.
get a rejection. I think it's if you get a rejection, not if you
Hmm.
get like nothing. If you get nothing,
Okay,
then it's not really a rejection. You got nothing.
right, right.
Okay. Um, So the personalization, let's talk about that. So the resume, we
Hmm.
talked a bit about the personalization. I have
Hmm.
another video that talks about how to personalize resume using
Hmm.
ChatGPT.
Right.
Don't use ChatGPT to rewrite your resume. It's
Hmm.
not credible. It might hallucinate. It might leave out things. It might use odd language. Like, don't do that.
Hmm.
Do it to assess what should be added, what should be removed, or which areas potentially would be added, which areas potentially would be removed. So
Hmm.
kind of make it relevant. You can store a query if it's like in GPT or something. You can also use
Hmm.
Gemini or something else, and just say, "Hey, this is the position. This is my resume. You know what should be included, what should be excluded, something like that."
Yep.
And then that gives
Sounds
you another thing. Always like do like check grammar.
right.
I think what people get wrong is they try to use the LLMs to rewrite the resume. I think that's
Hmm.
not the right approach. I think
Hmm.
use they don't get good results with that because first the LLM doesn't know what you did.
Hmm.
Second,
Hmm.
they can make up stuff, and the
Hmm.
third, in something that has so many fine, tiny details, it might miss some stuff on the as it rewrites.
Hmm.
However, if you want to say, "Hey, have you found something that is problematic?"
Hmm.
and have a video on that, that's completely different. So in my webinar, actually, I'm talking about this. Okay,
Hmm.
so the personalization, you need to personalize your resume. Also, personalize, of course, you need to find the contact person. Contact person is personalized for the position. If it's a
Hmm.
tiny company, you can email the founder or the CEO. If
Hmm.
it's a larger company, then you need to find the person that will potentially refer you. Now, in general, here's something that people don't understand. Like when somebody will say, people ask me to refer them all the time. If
Hmm.
they say, "Hey, do you have open position?" Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't know which
Hmm.
positions you want. Then what? I'm gonna read your resume, look online, find the right positions, think, oh, is
Hmm.
that a match or not a match? Get back to you, say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? No. So I'm just no.
Hmm.
However, if you say, here's my resume, here's why I think I might be a match, here's the position I want to apply to, I'm like,
Hmm.
cool. I don't even remember if there is a sign-up bonus now or not, but sometimes companies have sign-up bonus. And what do I care? I can always say, yeah, I referred him. I don't know him that well. It's still going to give a favorable treatment from
Hmm.
it still gets favorable treatment from the um, recruiting systems because an internal referral sometimes people care why it was rejected, so because
Hmm.
again, there's also some money involved and maybe it was a recommendation, so they kind of take a look maybe a bit more. If someone applies for a site, I think it gets less consideration. Again, it really depends on the company, but even if that person doesn't know you and they're willing to
Hmm.
refer you, it's still often better. Not always, but
Hmm.
often.
Right.
Okay, because it passed to somebody.
Right.
If you think
So,
about it, because that somebody
mm,
took some look at your resume, took
mhm,
some look at your pitch, and decided to send it. That accounts for something,
That's true.
right?
Mhm.
So some sanity check.
Mhm.
Okay. We talked about the pitch. The pitch is, again, a combination of the domain, that
Mhm.
position, why that person, why
Mhm.
you. Pitch is actually, I show this in my LLM, how to use LLM for recruiting. You
Mhm.
can personalize pitch quite nicely with that. I would recommend, again, don't like blindly send like
Mhm.
some verbose message,
Mhm.
but use that to do the personalization. Think about this, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When you're trying to pitch to a company, what are the end goals that you have? The first is the domain. You work in fintech, you like fintech, you want to do fintech, cool. That's
Mhm.
that's a domain pitch. The second is why this company, especially if it's a smaller company.
Mhm.
You have a reason why you want to apply there, I would assume. Otherwise, then there's a question, why would you apply to a company you don't want to apply to, especially if they're
Right.
a smaller company, because
Mhm.
they might pay less and it might be more work. So they want to know why you want them. So that's, again,
Mhm.
why this company.
Mhm.
So that's another thing maybe to include. The third is, why do you apply to why this person?
Mhm.
It
Right.
doesn't need to be very fancy. It says, you're the founder. I mean, that's a good reason.
Mhm.
It could be, you're head in engineering. That's a good reason.
Mhm.
It could be, you talked in a webinar, or you presented in this conference your
Mhm.
product. That's a good reason. If somebody presented the product in a summit and
Mhm.
they are from engineering, or at least product management, but definitely if they are from engineering,
Mhm.
try not to go through marketing, just
Mhm.
because it's different discipline.
Mhm.
Um, if they are from engineering, then yeah, I mean, it's a good reason to send them an email about the hiring it to the product, right? Because that's the
True.
product.
Mhm.
So anything that makes why this person, and
Right.
then why you? Like, you say something, I'm graduating, I'm looking for a full-time position, something like
Correct.
that.
I
Okay.
have a question on this. As you said, like there are a lot of important stuff one should mention in the pitch, like about both of the persons and why this communication is happening. There is the other way, like if I'm reaching out to someone with a very casual way, because adding on a LinkedIn, we can add message to their name. So it has a limit of like 300 characters or something like that. So if I had to shorten the pitch in just like 5, 6, or 7 lines, what should I be focusing on? Should I be sticking onto the same points but in shorter text, or is there anything I can cut off and I can just say these many? I can just mention that, and that can be a helpful thing.
Sure. So there are a couple of ways to go about that. So the first thing is, you can always buy the option to send a mail. So that's one.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
there is a company that you actually like,
Hmm.
and I think that if they don't reply, you don't pay for that or something. I don't remember exactly, and maybe
Hmm.
it's $10.
Hmm.
I don't remember. But first thing
Hmm.
is, you can send an email. There is an
True.
option, a paid option to send an email if it's somebody you really want. The
Hmm.
second thing is, in many cases, you can send them to their email. It's not that hard to find emails of people,
Hmm.
right? Especially the company. Maybe they talk, maybe they have an email.
Hmm.
It's usually not that hard.
Hmm.
Um, it's like first name, last name, or first name and the first letter of their last name, or something along those lines, right?
Correct. Hmm.
So that's another thing. Um, Another thing is, you can send them an email. Sorry, you can do a shorter version, right?
Hmm.
And if they accept, you send a longer version.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Just one thing to make sure. Make sure it looks personalized. If it
Hmm.
doesn't look personalized, they can flag you as spam. And if they flag you in spam, then you might have problem reaching out to people in the platform or via an email. That's why I always said the difference between spam and not spam is the
Hmm.
generic nature of it. If you
Hmm.
actually took the time to research the position and that person, and it shows, and even in 200 character or 300 characters you could show,
Hmm.
then it's not spam.
Sounds good. Hmm.
Okay, because
Hmm.
spam is usually just sending
Yeah, it's like a really generic, and you spray them. Yeah.
a spray and pray type of thing.
Hmm.
Cool. So before maybe we go to the examples, maybe we'll
Hmm.
talk about the resume and the position. This is
Hmm.
maybe, I estimate it's about 4 hours of work per day. This is when
Hmm.
you're thinking about kind of the points. I didn't write sending an email because I don't think that's a big deal.
Hmm.
But I did put the find to contact. So maybe finding a position, maybe 15 minutes each, finding a company that has a position. It doesn't
Hmm.
sound much, but remember you're doing that on bulk. So what does
Okay.
it mean? It means, let's assume that you are finding 100 companies.
Mm.
Okay. 100 companies is 25 hours, right?
Okay. Hmm.
Because if you take, 4 companies, it's about 20 hours. Sorry,
Hmm.
no, 25 hours, right? If it's divided by 50 minutes, 25 hours. 25
Hmm.
hours is a lot of time to go to some Crunchbase, some LinkedIn, some, Gartner reports, some industry conferences, and look for the list
Hmm.
of companies and then check that they
Hmm.
have a position.
Hmm.
That's like
Right.
25 hours. It's a long time. So
Hmm.
that goes back to the point. If you think of it context switch, you're like, oh, 50 minutes, like nothing. What will I do in 50 minutes?
Hmm.
But if you're thinking, okay, I want to batch a list of 100 companies and then check that they have
Hmm.
positions, actually 25 hours, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Does it
So
make sense now why the context switch is like why it's better to go after an industry? It's
right, I
much
think that's perfectly brilliant. That we should be focusing on a particular thing. For example, any sort of domain I'm thinking of, and stick to that domain and keep looking for the relevant position rather than just jumping from point A to point B, which is very irrelevant.
yes.
About the number of hours that you said, are we like talking about like 100 hours in total and then 25 hours just to find positions? Was that like what you're
So you
thinking of?
would need to spend maybe 120 hours in total
Okay.
to apply to
Hmm.
100 positions. So out of that, about 25 hours
Okay.
are to
Okay.
find the positions themselves,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right? It's much more than I'm just going to do a LinkedIn list.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's right. Mhm.
The second step is after you find those positions,
Mhm.
you want to cluster them. Why you
Okay.
want to cluster them? Because when you personalize your resume, it needs to be clustered. So when you
Mhm.
see this 100 position, look at them and say, okay, let's say this is a software engineer, this is a solution engineer, this is more of that type of backend, this is more of that type of backend. So you want to cluster them.
Mhm.
Once you cluster them, then you personalize.
Mhm.
Okay. Now the personalization is a two-step personalization, and it's important to understand. So what does it mean, a two-step personalization? A two-step means first you personalize for that cluster. Let's say fintech solutions engineer, I don't know, something like that.
Mhm.
Let's say junior fintech solutions engineer. So you just cluster them.
Mhm.
The second is you personalize for that particular position. So actually, a lot of the personalization is not to personalize for that specific position. It's most to personalize for the cluster. You put them
Okay.
in clusters.
Mhm.
Now, if you want to automatically put them in clusters, there is like many fancy embedding and other solution that might potentially
Mhm.
do it for you. But again, you
Mhm.
have when you have on this part of the 20 minutes, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You have here about um, 33 hours to spend.
Okay.
So that's including clustering, including personalization, including
Mhm.
if you need to fix some things in your resume,
Mhm.
including writing personalized. Then
Mhm.
you need to find those 2 contacts. Okay.
Mhm.
Finding 2 contacts. I put some time here. Might be easier,
Mhm.
might be more.
Mhm.
Knowing who to contact in that company is crucial. Now, why do I
Right.
do 2? I do 2 because on the course of a month, what you can do is you send an email to one person,
Mhm.
don't get a response,
Mhm.
send them via another communication channel. So let's say
Mhm.
email and LinkedIn, just saying.
Mhm.
or personal email and personal I actually prefer not, but that's a company email and I don't know, GitHub email.
Right.
Then you don't get them. You go to the second contact.
Mm-hmm.
You get one. Both of them said no. You apply through the site, done.
Okay.
So it might take you a couple of weeks. Now you can shorten it. Maybe once the first one did not respond to you after 3 days, start the other one. But the idea is that it needs to kind of move, right? And by the way, if you haven't applied, it doesn't count. So that means it's not part of that application. That's why these 25 hours, you will need to generate more than 100 positions to actually apply to 100 positions. Okay? Because maybe position will be closed, so this is like actual application, like you actually applied and you have a shot and you personalize. Then there is a personalized pitch. I put a lot of time here, and that could potentially be less. But the personalized pitch, it's the cover letter. Okay? So what does it mean, the cover letter? The cover letter is the letter that you send either to the person who refers you or to the hiring manager, or if it's a smaller company and you work with somebody, if you can find potentially the recruiter. Right. So this is like, consider my resume. This is to show that the purpose of a cover letter is to demonstrate your Many people just spray the resume all over the place. The purpose of a cover letter is to show that this is not accidental that you apply there.
Right.
It's actually, you might actually be a fit and you actually want that position. That's maybe a better way to think about the cover letter. A cover letter purpose is basically two things. It's first, if there is something lacking in your resume, you would be like, yeah, I've done this and this and this and that, which is kind of like that. So that's one reason. And the second reason is to tell that person that this is not accidental. Otherwise, why don't you just send your resume to the LinkedIn contact?
Right.
But you don't send your resume because it might look like you're just a spammer. Yeah. So that's kind of cover letter differentiate you. That's why I put a bit more time in that. Now, this is, by the way, quite generous on 120 hours. You could potentially do that less, but this is maybe a way of thinking about how much time things would take. Yes.
So I have like a couple of questions on cover letter. What first thing is like, do I need to like mention similar things that are already there in my resume? Like people write a bunch of lines, just like I've been working on these positions past with these employers, and these are my skill sets. But those things are already covered in your resume already. So do I need to mention that? That's like one question. And the second one is, as cover letter acts as a medium to communicate with the recruiter. Can we be friendly with them in cover letter? Can we add like some sort of informal tone to the letter, or it should be very strict and formal?
Sure. So the first is, even if your resume have all of those things, cover letter is about the personalization. So the fact that you have a resume for fintech doesn't mean that you're interested in this company. You cannot put that in your resume. Your resume cannot put, I'm interested in a company, I don't know, FinMagic. It cannot go into your resume. So that goes into a cover letter, right? Okay. The fact that you're actually interested in this company. So I would say this is one point about the cover letter. And some people don't read resume as well. Like maybe they're like in the mobile and like, oh, I don't feel like opening the PDF. So you put like a one line or two line on your resume, or of your resume. Going back to the tone, I think the tone should be professional. Okay. Professional doesn't mean legal. So what it means, it should be according to, whatever. It doesn't need to be formal, but it needs to be professional. What is professional? Professional is that we are talking about this opportunity. Right. So you'd say, hi, dear something hiring manager. I contacting you to apply to this position. Always mention the position, by the way. Don't say positions.
Right.
say the position, so people will even know what you've been talking about. You'll be surprised sometimes how many odd positions there are, or people they don't know, or maybe it belongs to a different person. Always mention that position. So yeah, you're just contacting them for this position, and then you say something about yourself and how you relate to that position. You say, hey, I've been working in fintech for this number of years, and something, and then you would say, I find this position, and what your product to be very interesting because of whatever reason you want to work for this company or this product.
Mhm.
And then, would you be able to forward my resume
Sounds good. Mhm.
or consider me for the position if that's the actually person? Like if you email the CEO, you want to forward my resume, you say, just like consider me for the position or something like that. So this is professional. It's not like formal,
Mhm.
but it's not like your friend. It's more like professional.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, professional. I always like when someone says, what is a professional tone? I mean, professional is you objectively talking about something that it's part of the job. So that's professional.
Right. Like I was just thinking of something when I was writing my cover letters and reading some articles just to guide myself. They were like act of storytelling, or you should be telling your stories through your cover letters, and that adds a lot of different kinds of views. Like, should I be very focused on technical perspective, or can I add like different flavors from other experiences? But as you said, it should be more focused towards position, and it should be more of a professional tone rather than just thinking or just telling about anything which is not
Yeah, think
relevant.
about sometimes people they mix themselves
Mhm.
together with a position. Think about this as contract work. So what it means
Mhm.
is I mean it's a full-time work, but it's kind of like it's kind of similar to contract work. So contract work, imagine that you're like a plumber
Mhm.
and there is a proposal for a job, an
Mhm.
RFP, request for proposal. There is a
Mhm.
plumbing job at the local hospital, right?
Mhm.
And you want to apply to this, okay?
Mhm.
Then And let's assume that the way that it works is it's contract work. So what it means, they're hiring you for certain hours, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of similar. So you need to think about, okay, that person has work to do,
Mhm.
and you're telling them why you are the person to do this work. And you send them your resume, which demonstrate your ability to do this work as part of your request in the cover letter.
Right.
It's almost like you're not selling yourself. That's why
Mhm.
people sometimes they get too much bogged down in the resume and they're thinking about, oh, but I'm like more like this, and I want people to know this about me or know that. And it's like your resume is just your maybe credentials for doing the work,
Mhm.
right? And your cover letter is your request to be considered to do this work. And why do you think it should be considered?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why I tell people don't be too emotionally attached. Like if something is not relevant to demonstration of your ability to do the work, just delete it. It's fine.
That's uh one silly question. How can I keep myself motivated to do all the job process? Sometimes I like motivation. Like I've been just applying and I'm just putting a lot of hours in applications rather than just like brushing up on my skills that I'm actually interested in. So.
So I say this is a good question. So how one can stay motivated? The first is I think support group is important. There are other people like you
Mhm.
that are doing similar things,
Mhm.
and I think it's important to maybe meet people maybe on a weekly basis
Mhm.
and just share where you are, where they are, so you have some support group for that.
Mhm.
The second is imagine that you're like a real estate agent, okay?
Mhm.
And you just started. You cannot
Mhm.
measure yourself by how many houses you sold because it's too far and that could get you kind of back down. You say, okay,
Mhm.
have I met a client? Did I sign a client? Have I done an open house? Did we get offers?
Mhm.
That's kind of maybe a better way to think about that. Don't measure yourself by getting an offer, because then it's already probably done.
Mm.
Measure yourself by tracking kind of points almost that you earned,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You have points and you try to make certain points every day. You try to hit that 30 points or 50 points. And if you hit that points, those minutes that you should have achieved according to the points per category, even if in the end you end up with applying to no positions for like a week, it's
Mhm.
irrelevant. Because if you've done all the work, click and send, you can finish that in 2 days.
True.
So don't measure yourself by the send.
Mm.
Also, don't measure yourself by the passing interviews, because this has nothing to do with passing interviews. This has everything to do to getting an interview.
Sure.
Right? So that's another thing. And what you're trying to do is to improve. If your current ratio is 1 to 50,
Mhm.
you try to improve to have like maybe 1 out of 15. That's going to be a good ratio. If for every
Mhm.
15 position that you apply, you get
Mhm.
one interview, that is
Mhm.
pretty good. That means that if that position got, just to give you perspective, right? Think about from the other side.
Mhm.
Let's say for every position, there is about 100 candidates. Okay.
Right.
Now, some of those positions in the end won't hire anybody.
Mhm.
So let's assume half of them hired. Okay. So for every 200 people that apply, one person will get a job. And let's assume that from phone screening, it's 1 to 10.
Okay.
I'm just throwing, like, I don't, it
Mhm.
kind of depends on the industry, but let's say 1 to 10.
Mhm.
So what it means is that your chance of getting a phone screen is supposed to be 1 of 20 if you are just average.
Mhm.
So if you get something like 1 to 15, you beat the average. If you get
Right.
in an interview, let's say 1 to 5, you're doing actually
Mhm.
very well,
Cool.
right? If you have 1 to 2, that usually means that you're aiming too low because you're not
Mhm.
supposed to have so many interviews.
Mm.
Uh, so maybe aim a bit higher. But
Mhm.
that's kind of how I would think about that. Track your stats.
Mhm.
And I think that's how you every day it looks like some progress have been made. And statistically, if you apply to 4 positions a day, you're supposed to, and let's assume you're like 1 to 15, you're supposed to get an interview and a half every week. So that also will keep you going. It's like you get in those interviews.
I think yeah, that makes sense. And I'm noting these 2 points, like making things into stages rather than just thinking of the whole thing in one go, and thinking of a gamification kind of solution. Like I'll just assign some points to every stage that I've done. That'll be like that count like something I've done today. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and give it the time to do it well. And I would doubt that you run out of fintech companies, but
Mhm.
if you go for another industry, that's also perfectly fine. But just
Mhm.
kind of try to narrow on something. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for you. Those context switch is just going to be too difficult, and what you're
Mhm.
going to end up with low quality applications.
Mhm. I think yeah, that might be one of the issues. Yeah, due to which I'm
Yeah,
not like.
because one of the things that you said is when you're comparing this to maybe your friend, what are the two things that are differentiating? First is what
Mm.
people that have done well have done two things. The first thing is they apply through references.
Mhm.
It's hard if you just randomly apply to
Mhm.
companies to find references
Mhm.
in random companies because you don't even know who to.
Mhm.
And like say you find a conference where people spoke,
Mhm.
then it's you have a list of people. So I would say I think it's easier when you know who to target. And the
Mhm.
second thing that you mentioned is the differentiation. Those who've done well were actually focused,
Mhm.
like on
Uh,
something.
right. I think yeah, that's very relevant. Uh, Is it like really likely that even someone applies to referrals and they don't hear back?
Um, when you apply and you don't hear back,
Hmm.
give it a few days
Hmm.
and try a different person, try a different email of that person, give it a few days, try a different
Hmm.
person, give it a few days, a different email of that person, then apply to the website.
Hmm.
Um, don't expect to hear back.
Hmm.
Let's say this: the reference you should hear back from. Don't
Okay.
expect to hear back from the applying system.
Hmm. Hmm. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully all, you find it useful, and so our listeners, about the strategy of how to apply to positions. And yeah, I'll continue tracking. Keep me update, and good luck in your job search.
Absolutely, Professor Sharfi. This was like the one of the greatest sessions with you, and I've noted down a lot of things. I'm definitely gonna assign the timeline that you said, and we'll work on it, and we'll keep you updated like weekly.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.